Hey everybody, welcome back to the Chorizo Bro Show. Joseph back at it again with yet another book review for January. Today we're going to be talking about Clive Barker's The Great and Secret Show. So this is going to be a little bit different than the videos that I normally do here. Normally I try to do just like a review, try to give it some whatever number out of 5 stars, give you my thoughts on the book a little bit. This is going to be a little bit different. This one is my favorite novel from Clive Barker for sure. And it's one of my favorite novels of all time. It's very weird, it's very strange, very cool. But just right out the gate, it's 5 out of 5 for me. But there are some caveats and some explanations that I need to go through before I go ahead and tell you about what I'm going to do here. Because what I think is going to happen is I think I'm just going to get kind of excited talking about this. And I'm gonna probably spoil the crap out of it, and I'm just gonna kind of say it here that that's what's gonna happen. And I think this is really just gonna be more of a discussion, summary, review slash whatever. I'm here by myself. None of the guys have read this book, so I don't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or kind of remind me of what I might forget or whatever the case might be there. So I'm really just going to talk about a cool book that I really like, and just tell you about the cool stuff about it, and that's really it. There's not going to be too much of a rhyme or reason to it. Just know out the gate, if you can find this book and you're into getting weird, check it out. It is a beautifully written book, a lot of creativity, fantasy, horror, all the things. If you're into the stuff that I've already checked out and like the things that I've liked as well, then you're probably going to really like this. This is top notch, really fun. This is one of those books that I revisit over and over and over because of how strange it is, and some of the details that I pick up are really fun. So, that being said, I'm just going to kind of go through and talk about what's going on here. And it's just going to be, hey guys, here's how much I love this cool, weird story. That's really all this is. So get strapped in. Let's talk about The Great and Secret Show. The basic summary of this really strange, convoluted plot is there's a gentleman that, a gentleman, a character called Randolph Jaff starts off in a working in a post office in Nebraska. Now, what happens there, he's been assigned with going through letters that don't meet their destinations. And he's hates this job. It's just this drudgery every day of sorting through old mail that doesn't really matter. And his boss has kind of tasked him with going through and finding jewelry or money that somebody might be sending, or anything that might be of value to the crew, and report to him about it and share it and whatever. And that's kind of, they have a problem with taking all these letters that could have something valuable in them and sending them to the incinerator. So he's being tasked with finding potentially valuable things in there. Now, what he ends up doing on accident is discovering that there's something called the art. The art is very this esoteric idea of there being this maybe secret society, this religion sort of based off of this concept of another metaphysical realm. And he learns about this through putting together, connecting dots with these weird letters that he finds, and something will speak to him in these letters. And he gets obsessed with trying to figure out what this esoteric knowledge is. That's how it starts. Then he goes on this quest to once he leaves the post office, and that's a crazy thing that happens there. But once he decides to leave that, he gets realizes that he's learning to use the art, and he becomes this special type of person. He can sort of things just luckily fall into his lap. Things become easy because he's sort of transcended the normal thing of life, right? Going to work and your everyday thing, and discovering that once you decide to point yourself in the direction of the art, things just kind of happen naturally for you. This is a very difficult thing to talk about because it's like it's hard to explain what this concept is, right? So he gets connected with a gentleman named Fletcher, who is a scientist that's addicted to mescaline. So he's very much into hallucinogenic drugs, shrooms, that kind of thing. He meets up with this guy, and he thinks the way to figure out how to break into this metaphysical realm is through science, again, esoteric science. What ends up happening is this guy Fletcher, he discovers a way to make life evolve, and it's through something called the nuncio. It's like a liquor, it's like a drink, like a liquid that has scientific magical properties that when it touches you or when you ingest it or when it gets in your bloodstream or however, it's almost living. However it gets into you, it elevates your consciousness, it elevates your physicality. So if you do this, you sort of evolve to the next step. And the proof of that is a simian, an ape that Fletcher gives this nuncio, and it becomes a human being, even though it looks like an ape still. So it can talk, it can feel, it can communicate. It's hyper intelligent in terms of a an ape becoming a human being, at least. And so there's proof that, hey, this stuff works. This stuff will evolve you. And then they become, Fletcher and Randolph Jaff become enemies, and they each get some of this nuncio in them, and they each become an elevated version of themselves. So there's the one Fletcher who decides that what Jaff wants to do is sort of evil, him trying to mess with things that are not supposed to be messed with, and decides that it's an evil practice that he decides to do this. And so they become enemies. Fletcher and Jaff become enemies, and they take this sort of spiritual, it turns into like spiritual warfare. So you get the concept that they're actually physically fighting, but as they traverse through America, um, they're fighting sort of in this spiritual plane, and it ends up in this place called Paloma Grove. And all of their powers, they're running out, they're becoming desperate, and they keep attacking each other, and there's like nothing left. So they end up in this Paloma Grove place, right? And yeah, again, this is very hard to explain. There's something called the League of Virgins. Basically, what happens is this this fight between Jeff and Fletcher culminates with them sort of buried underneath the ground in Paloma Grove. This storm goes through, and all of this rainwater collects. These high school girls are hanging out that day, and it's really random. It's a super hot summer. They're kind of don't want to hang out at the mall. They go and are going to the forest because they think the shade might help, and they find the resting place of Jaff and Fletcher, and all of the water collects in this one area where they were. So the girls decide to go swimming there. And so this last ditch effort of these guys, these two superhumans almost at that point, the girls are swimming in this thing, and Fletcher and Jaff sort of them and infect or inject themselves into these girls. And what happens there, of course, that's their last ditch effort to sort of get their being out there. And then they rest. Water goes eventually. And the girls, having been transformed by this experience, there's four of them. I think there's four of them. They're consumed with this idea that they need to get pregnant. So then these girls all go out and they do these different things and they act out in different ways because they're trying to get pregnant, right? And this is obviously the influence of those two guys, the Jaff and Fletcher. So these girls go off and they act out in ways that ends up getting them pregnant, and that's where the story really takes off. Then it's something like 18, 19 years in the future, and the couple of them that did get pregnant and see it all the way through, um, there's a couple of them, these twins that one of the girls have, and they're grown up now, Tommy Ray and Joe Beth, and they happen to be the spawn of the Jaff. That's how he calls himself. And then Fletcher's kid is this kid named Howie. So then they become these star-crossed lovers because they meet and they something draws them together, and but their fathers are enemies. So it's just there's so much going on here. The Jaff has this unusual ability of being able to get people's fears out of them and turn them into a physical being. So let's say that the Jaff was trying to get the fear out of me to make a creature or army, create an army. He would make me think of what scared me the most and be able to turn that into something, and it would be like they all have different kinds of physical properties. So he meets all these people and he sucks the fears out of them and uses that to make monsters that are his like army. And some of them look like centipedes, some of them look like scorpions, some of them look like little monkeys, like little demon monkeys. This is really trippy and really out there, you guys. It is very hard to explain. So the Jaff can do that. Fletcher kind of does the opposite. Remember, these beings are the antithesis of one another. So Fletcher, he can do it, but he gets people's like dreams out of them, and they live somewhere outside of LA. So there's a lot of Hollywood culture here. So he'll meet like somebody that who is obsessed with like talk shows or like novellas or soap operas, right? So he'll meet somebody like that, Fletcher, and his influence can sort of make their dreams become reality. So they would, let's say it's some like old lady that watches soap operas all day. She would dream about them and think about them and sort of manifest who these characters are, and then she'd like wake up and then there's like these, they seem like ghosts, and they're like manifestations of um these characters from novellas. It's so weird. um so that's kind of this place, Paloma Grove, where they are. They're the Fletcher and the Jaff are trying to battle one another and using their children and the fears and the dreams of the people that live in this town. It's this sprawling epic. There's a guy who used to work in television who ends up finding where Fletcher and Jaff had been buried, and he like falls into a cave there where what happens with the girls happened. And that's another subplot of this where they're trying to figure out, there's a journalist that's trying to figure out what happened to that character. And there's a party, a Hollywood party, because this gentleman has passed and they're trying to get all his friends together. And then the Jaff sees this as an opportunity to get all these people together, and then one by one he separates them and he pulls their nightmares out of them. It's so freaking weird, man. This is one of the strangest books that I've ever read, and it's incredibly spiritual. It really makes you think. All these characters are really fleshed out, and they all have these strange nuances to each of their characters, and every one of these characters makes sense. Their decisions, the way they feel about one another. Some of them are like hyper religious because of what happened to them in the past, like the mother of Tommy Ray and Joe Beth. Um, gets really into like Mormonism and like Christianity, and because what happened to her with the League of Virgins situation freaked her the fuck out. So you understand, like you see like Joe Beth and Tommy Ray having these like feelings towards her being hyper religious, but then you understand why she feels the way she does, and you understand why what's happened to her has made her feel this way about what's going on. All of these characters make sense, and that's sort of what I've mentioned this before with other stories where I'll read a book or whatever, and when the characters start behaving in a way or something happens where they make a decision that doesn't make sense to their character, and you go, okay, this is just like the writer trying to make the plot work, and that's not what happens here. You really get the vibe that Clive Barker went through and really, like, with love, with a lot of time, went through and like fleshed these characters out that in a way that they all of their decisions make sense. Some of them that have done some horrible things get a bit of redemption, and some of them that are supposed to be the quote unquote good guys, do some morally gray things, and you start to think, well, maybe they're not all that great either, and there's a lot going on here. There is a weird concept called quiddity. It's supposed to be like the dream sea. It's supposed to be this metaphysical realm, this thing that Jaff is supposed to be trying to like sneak his way in. He's trying to get in there when he didn't earn it. And there's this concept of quiddity where you get to visit it the first night that you're outside of your mother's womb. You visit there the first night you sleep next to your true love, and you visit it a third time the night before you die, or the last time you sleep before you die. So there's this weird, again, metaphysical, like spiritual element to this place, and there's something evil on the other side. So that sort of unfolds as you go through, and this whole thing is mysterious. So there is a sequel to this, and I may get there probably soon after this, where I'm sure some of the mystery about that is fleshed out. But that's kind of not the point of this story. This story is more so what's going on with the characters, and there's this kind of mysterious thing happening, and it's just the reality of the situation they're in. There's other strange things going on here as well. There's a character called Kisoon, who through revelations throughout the story, when you first meet him, he's like this weird, like wizard character that lives in a bubble outside of time. And the Jeff figures out that this guy isn't all he seems. He figures that out upon meeting him pretty fast, but that he's got knowledge about what's going on with quiddity and what might be going on with some evil forces on the other side. There's some secrets he's holding. It's obvious that he is, and he may have some ulterior motives as well. But there's a wizard living in a time bubble. That's kind of crazy. There's a strange evolved ape that evolved through drinking this weird magical scientific liqueur. There's dream ghosts. There's nightmare centipede monsters. There's little monsters that they make. The wizard Kisoon makes from shit and semen. So that's fucking weird. I mean, I can go on and on. There's a character, a character just that comes in for a second that interacts with the Jaff, and he mentions that even though he's got a missing arm, he can still like feel with it, and the Jaff can almost like see it. He can like sense it still, his missing limb. That's fucking weird. A character called Tesla. She's a friend of our journalist, Grillo or Grio. So Tesla ends up becoming kind of the hero of the story accidentally, and you don't expect that. It kind of comes out of nowhere because you're expecting Howie to sort of team up with Joe Beth because her twin brother Tommy Ray ends up being a fucking asshole. So that's weird. Oh, did I mention that that Tommy Ray calls himself the Death Boy, and he gets like ghosts to follow him on his trek throughout all of this. He will pass through like a cemetery, and the ghosts seem to be attracted to him because he's the son of the Jaff and also got some Nuncio in him as well. Spoiler alert, like I said. So there's a lot of shit going on here. Um, it's very strange and very cool, and you're almost going like, it doesn't really make sense, but it does. It all plot wise makes sense. None of this doesn't make sense except that he takes the fantastical element and just goes with it, and you're either going to be on the right or you're not. So there's something called the Iad Ouroboros. I don't know how to say that, but they're basically like the evil part that live in that dream sea, and they're wanting to invade our realm. And you don't really find out exactly what's going on with that. There's a character called Harry Damour, and he is a recurring character in Clive Barker's books. So Clive Barker's got a lot of work. He's got a bunch of short stories. The Books of Blood, I'll shout that out. but he's written a lot of books. And this Harry D'Amour character is like a, I want to say parapsychology, but I don't think that's right. Like a paranormal researcher, like a detective that does paranormal stuff. And he pops up in several of Clive Barker's work, and he's in here. He's not a huge character, but he does communicate with one of our main characters. And then he turns up a little bit later, and he's got some kind of lines. And I'm pretty sure I read the sequel to this a long time ago. I want to say probably like when I was like 19 or something. So I don't really remember, but I'm pretty sure Harry D'Amour makes an appearance in the sequel to this. So that's cool. So there's like this recurring character in all of Clive Barker's work. There's this weird spiritual realm that's really interesting, and some of the characters jump in and out of it. So it's fantastic, you guys. And all the way the story ends has something to do with Oppenheimer. So that's a thing. It's really cool, man. And again, it is convoluted and it is strange, and I can see that being a block for some people that might try to read this, being like, "Oh, I thought it was going to be like Hellraiser or um it's like his horror movies or whatever," and it's very much not like that. There's horrific elements, so it is kind of a horror, it is kind of a fantasy. There is not really a coming of age element, but there is romance in here. It's sort of a criticism or like a look at Hollywood also. He doesn't make Hollywood look glamorous in this. He's sort of making fun of the concept of Hollywood and actors. There's a little bit of a satirical dig at Hollywood in here as well, and how those people are vapid and kind of soulless, and they all kind of talk shit about each other. All the characters that like knew the one that died in that sort of accident with the cave in or whatever. All the people that go and meet him kind of are there just to prove that they were there, or some of them are using it as like an opportunity to be enterprising and network in TV shows and stuff. It's kind of like saying, talking about how that's probably what Hollywood really is like, but it is kind of like a dig at it. Pretty cool. So yeah, I really love this book. I really love this book, and I've revisited it several times in my lifetime. I read it, I think, when I was maybe 17, 18, and then every couple of years something will remind me, man, that book was badass, or like, man, that concept of the Nuncio is really cool, and the rules about getting into this weird dream state, and like, is it an afterlife, and like, can people evolve, this weird situation with what's going on with the post office and secret societies. I mean, this whole stuff is really, really fucking cool. So yeah, I've kind of just gone on a rant or a summary or whatever. I don't know what this is. I just finished it not that long ago, and I've been sitting on it and going like, man, when am I gonna revisit it again? Because I'm going to, right? I think part of it was watching the Jodorowsky's Dune documentary and going like, just kind of reinvigorating my love for just books and stuff. And I wanted to talk about something I loved. So when we did the Jodorowsky's Dune conversation, Dune is one of my favorite things of all time. I love Dune. And I was like, man, I really want to just stay excited. I want to keep going with things that I like. There were some books that I did in 2024, and and that's okay, that I read some stuff that I wasn't in love with, that I didn't enjoy. That's going to happen again this year with my reviews and stuff, but I'm going to make it a point for this year to talk about stuff that I know I love, and this is on there. So this is why this is making an appearance. This is why this review or whatever this is has got this strange formatting or whatever, because it's me just talking to you out there, and it's very unedited and very just a conversation I'm having with you. And I guess I'm hoping that somebody out there searched the Great and Secret Show and then took a chance on whatever this, who the fuck is this guy with the very apparent Texas flag out here, just this random stuff I got going on. And it took a chance and watched this and was like, man, I'm gonna check that book out, or I read that and I took a different thing away from it, or I really hated that. That was my least favorite Clive Barker book. Who knows? I want to talk with all of you. I want y'all to challenge me and to celebrate with me and maybe shit on my ideas a little bit too. I need a good ass whooping online, just like everyone else does. I need to be challenged. I need someone to tell me that I got something wrong. And I want to have a great conversation with you guys. So those of you out there that have made it this far, those of you that have seen my other stuff and have seen that I'm still learning how to do this and I'm still developing my style and figuring this whole thing out. Thank you, first off, and you know, I'm loving this, and I love that there's a community out there of other like-minded people in terms of that love books and love movies and documentaries and all that stuff. So yeah, on that note, I'm gonna get out of here, y'all. I think I've said all I've had to say about the book, and check it out, man. This is great, and I'm gonna come back to Clive Barker again because there's some other things that I really love that he's done. So we'll talk about that when we get there. I think for our next conversation with the three of us, it's going to be just hey, here's 2024 in a nutshell. Here's where the Chorizo Bros project has gone and what's happened, and here's what we're planning to do in the future. It's just going to be a love letter to the practice of this. It's just going to be us talking. And then eventually we're going to come back at it with A Scanner Darkly by Philip K. Dick. So that's going to be really fun. But on that note, I think I'm going to shut it down here, you guys. Thank you again for taking the time. Y'all enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see you next time.